I'm Shwa, and you are listening to Light Up with Shwa, a weekly podcast to open our hearts and minds on a journey with me. I want to go back to a quote that so you have been, in the media, and there was, I really liked about, if you want to talk about so we will come to the Islam and the women in Islam, but I want to talk about where your mother said, it was very amusing to me, when you came from Egypt, you came back to United States, and your mom said to you, like, most kids, quote, most kids come home from trips with souvenirs, but Celene returns with a new religion, a spouse, and a baby. Yes. So that, I just wanted to say that. It was really interesting to me. Okay, so let's talk about women, gender, in Islam. You are that's what your research area is, right?
Yes.
So talk about this hot topic. What are the misperceptions and misconceptions about Islam and women in Islam? And how can we educate our listeners?
I'd say the misconceptions and misperceptions are both on the part of people who grow up Muslim in a particular cultural expression of Islam. And then it's also on the other side as well from people who really don't have much context at all about what Islam is about. So I think there's misperceptions and misconceptions on various sides. And part of this process for me has been educating myself, because I did come into Islam in my early 20s. So I came into Islam with a set of assumptions about the nature of womanhood, or the what it means to be a woman, or what it means to be a man. And I think, for me personally, my scholarship has been a way to answer some of the questions that I brought to Islam academically, but also personally.
Before we go ahead, how did you identify yourself? Did you identify yourself differently before embracing Islam and after Islam? Could you talk about that a little?
I think I'm very grateful for the foundations that I had. My parish as a young person was a very socially engaged, very justice-centered. The priest who was a major role model in my life was one of the most incredible human beings. I have just such fond memories of his spirit and his enthusiasm. But at a certain point in my teenage years, Christianity, kind of the central doctrines about the person of Jesus being both fully divine and God incarnate and also being human, didn't really sit with how I understood human nature or the divine. And so I, while kind of appreciating this upbringing, I just kind of stepped back from kind of the theological commitments. And at that point, I was fortunate enough to encounter a fantastic meditation group. And I, for a long time, did a Zen meditation, which for me was nice because it put me in touch with things like breath and quieting the mind and
mindfulness.
Yes, mindfulness, exactly. And then I also, through that experience with the Zen Buddhist monk, was able to then explore other forms of meditation in Hinduism and other traditions that I hadn't previously been kind of exposed to robustly. So by the time I think Islam made sense to me, because I understood it at this juncture of kind of mindfulness and the kind of framework of monotheism that I had growing up. And I really still to this day understand Islam as being at that juncture. So when there's, I think when I think about the daily prayers, I mean, to me, that's about mindfulness. I mean, on the one hand, it's about worship and it's about ritual, but the kind of key to the prayers is the mindfulness. And so there's almost this continuity, even though I've been experiencing different traditions and different faith leaders as mentors, there has on some level been a type of continuity.
That's very interesting. That's good for you, right? It has not like been foreign to you totally to come from one side of the bridge to another.
I think the one thing that was kind of the one moment was learning kind of all of the ritual practices and the laws, and not just what is mandatory and forbidden, but also all of these shades in between when it comes to Islamic ethics and morality. Because, I mean, the essential is to know what is prohibited and what is obligatory. But then there's just this vast space in between. And so to really understand what is actually a core part of the religion and what might be just a folk custom or a practice that developed over time. I mean, this kind of takes time when you're just coming into Islam to sort through. And actually now as a chaplain, many young people come to me who have not been Muslim growing up but are learning about Islam. And a lot of their process and a lot of the questions that they come to me with have to do with this core question about, is this essentially part of Islam, or is this something that has been tacked on kind of as the centuries progress?
Can you name any questions or any?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the typical things you might expect.
So you're talking about the Muslims, the born
non-Muslims,
non-Muslim.
and also
born Muslims. Sometimes
too.
they're not practicing, or they're not really aware, or really research for it.
Well, with the Muslims, what I find is that when they come to college, maybe it's their first time relating to other Muslims who aren't specifically from their ethnic background, or from their particular kind of, type of Islam. And so I think even for Muslims, when they encounter the intra-Muslim diversity, it raises questions.
So you were talking about non-Muslims initially. So they are coming to you and asking you questions about Islam. Have there been, it has been helpful for them, or they're like coming more and asking more and learning and...
I have a regular
What is the
interest.
pattern?
I have a regular interest from students, and not just Americans, but also often international students who kind of are also experiencing or thinking through or witnessing Muslim practices for the first time.
So that is a good age, you think, to learn about other faiths, other cultures in college?
Well, the approach that I've taken with my own daughter is to introduce her very early on to all different types of religious practices, because I feel that it's important for an understanding of history, for an understanding of politics, for an understanding of just human nature. And I think, people have asked me before, well, aren't you worried that maybe she won't grow up Muslim, or what if she likes one of these other religions,
other faiths or something?
Yes, and I said, I hope she likes the other faiths,
That's
because there's a lot of wisdom
in
them,
faith,
and the more that she understands different faiths, the deeper she's going to be able to connect with people throughout her life. And I think Islam is also, the Quran is inherently in conversation with Christianity, with Judaism, with other monotheisms broadly. And I mean, it's even in conversation, you might call it, with faiths that aren't monotheistic.
I love the way you say this. Like, it's in conversation with other faiths. That's really good. And it is, to be honest, as much as I have learned, and you are, of course, more into it. So, yeah. So are women oppressed in Islam? Are you oppressed?
I was beginning to think about it like, the feminist discourse always talks about intersectionality, that people, are a composite of multiple identities. But I think that's really true. And we have to look at things like economic accessibility to resources, and there's all different factors that kind of color a person's experience in the world.
That's true.
Certainly I don't feel
I don't think you look at all. You are all over. You're doing everything. Then you are. I did read your article, which mentioned that yes, there are some cultures or some countries that it's not Islam oppressing them; it's the cultures. Do you agree with that? It's the culture and how they interpret it?
I think that religion is a very powerful and potent thing. And if you tell somebody God wants you to do this, you can really use that as a manipulating force. And even if you're not working at the level of someone's individual psyche, if on a societal level you establish norms and say, this is what God wants, regardless of how accurate that might be in representing the divine will, is going to, if you kind of drill this message long enough, it's like other forms of coercion. It does have an effect, both at the individual and the societal level. And this is true with many types of belief systems or ideologies, or whether they're named as religion or fall into some other category.
So you are practicing Muslim and being a woman in the United States as a minority faith, but as a your majority
white.
As a white,
Yes.
So do you still face difficulty, or do you feel that you are more privileged compared to?
Yeah. Oh, I'm completely aware of the privilege of being white. And I can even notice when people, sometimes strangers, see me in a scarf, and then I'll speak to them, there'll be a kind of moment of cognitive dissonance sometimes, and you can see it on their faces. Like you can't both have an American accent and be white and wear a scarf. So at this point, it's just kind of a little amusing to me. But the other side of that is I'm so aware of all the racial prejudices and the xenophobia.
Oh, wow.
And, working with students and, my own colleagues, I'm aware how much bigotry is out there, and in overt forms, in subtle forms. And I escape a good bit of it. But it's, I still feel like this is my battle too, because it affects so many people that I love and care about.
So maybe you can be a better person to tackle it or educate, I guess, because you are at a position that you can, you kind of have more power.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
How can? So how do you do that? Like, how do you help people? I'm sure you help the students or women and young women.
A lot of my strategy at this point is much more subtle. So, for instance, a lot of times internships come across my desk or scholarship opportunities, and I regularly forward them to, for instance, young women who I know are incredibly capable, who might otherwise not get this information. So there's those kind of subtle ways.
Okay.
I think it's a critical moment in America. I think we're going in waves. So the issue of race comes to the center, and there's there's a lot of talk, and but I think if people don't personally have friends who have experienced bigotry on account of their race, if they don't feel like it's a personal issue for them, regardless if they're white or not, if we need to reach kind of more of a critical mass where it's not just people of color and you know, a small cohort of white allies, if you want to use that language. I think still, if the communities are still sometimes so homogeneous that people might not have opportunities to form friendships or have family who are not also white. So I think it's a matter of continuing to help people connect across these differences.
Okay, so let me have something. How do you define a good parent-child relationship?
I mean, I think it always comes back to communication and respect and some of these basic principles. And I mean, care too, because the less kind of ego we have as people, I think the better and brighter we can show up in the world. And I think that's just as true for parenting as it is in so many other domains.
What is your best relationship from the point, like, would you say, okay, your which relationship is the best that you have? Let's put it this way.
Oh, in life?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think that could vary based on the week or the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Well,
so there's no one person or one relationship.
I'd say we're very close as a family, the three of us, and I'm tempted to include also the cat, although I think that might be giving her a little bit too much status in the family.
Oh, wow. All right.
But, I mean, we do, I think because we don't live close to a lot of other family members, and just by virtue of the fact that we spend so much time together, you know, and there's...
that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. I won't put too much stress on that. Okay. So, I was asking about how do you identify as a person? Like, do you say I am an American, Muslim American, a woman first? Or how do you identify yourself? Do you see yourself a woman or a person? Like, how do you identify yourself?
I think it depends on a context, because in any given group, I'm looking to figure out what do I have in common with these people, and you know, how am I different? I think that's the nature of how sometimes human beings think and how we form social relationships. So that it always changes because I'm kind of floating between different types of people and different groups.
Now if I ask you, so how do you feel at this moment? Who are you?
I mean, we've been talking about Americanness and whiteness and Muslimness.
But when you see yourself,
womanhood.
how do you you know how you are in that state? What state are you mostly in? When you're teaching, is it different? When you're at home, it's different? I think the different social spaces that we move through kind of dictate who we show up as. Okay.
So certainly, I think my family knows me as kind of fun-loving and whimsical, and I think some of that spirit permeates everything that I do. But you know, my students in chaplaincy might see more of my caretaking side, and people in academia might see more of the intellectual side. So different people, and I think that's just true of human beings in general. And you know, who are you actually?
Yep. Okay, so what keeps you up at night?
My dissertation. Quite literally.
Okay. What is your biggest pain point?
Well, I should say I like being up at night. I love the kind of creative juices that feel like they just don't flow as well at 2 p.m. as they do at 2 a.m.
Okay.
But I think also that the creative process is so important, and whether that's writing or whether that's doing some type of art or whether that's just kind of having a good conversation that can also have that sense of joy about it.
What else do you like to do?
Yeah. Well, I grew up riding horses. But I've actually discovered that, but I've actually discovered that I get quite sore after I ride horses. So now I just like watching my daughter ride horses. And I love gardening as well. It's kind of the part I love the most isn't actually the planting; it's the pulling out of the weeds. And I think I think as human beings we have destructive impulses too, so my garden bears the brunt of my destructive impulses. Well, that's good. But it also brings forth beautiful flowers and vegetables. I have to come and see your garden, huh? Yes. See it after I've weeded. So what is there any pain point that you have at this time? Yes. I think in the academy there's a lot of stress on producing and coming up with new ideas and novel ideas and turning out things that are going to be well liked and well received. And some days that feels quite burdensome. On other days that I'm so creative, I'm so grateful to be able to think and write as part of a profession. And the fact that people might want to read what I've written occasionally is a joyous experience. But I'm also aware that I make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes reading what I wrote even a year ago is an awful process because I've changed in my thinking, and it is, kind of in ink out in the world somewhere. Yeah, that's right. I also think to take it back to parenting, some days I feel, really grateful, and I think we're doing a good job, and I look at my daughter and I say she's going to, be just fine in the world. And some days I think, we haven't done enough of this, or we should have done this, or why didn't we, think of that. But I think mostly I just try to show up with a good kind of spirit and integrity and just do the best that is possible. That's good. All right, so some last leg of questions. So what's the value of gratitude in your life? Yes, I think as Muslims, it's a central concept to Islam, and alhamdulillah, and gratitude is for things that go well and things that are pleasant, and things that don't go well and things that are unpleasant. And that kind of definition of gratitude, I think, is maybe different than simply having gratitude for the things that are good. So there's all of this brain science that suggests that people, even just expressing their gratitude kind of day after day, it elevates mood. I've seen studies where it extends life. Yeah, it does. I believe in it. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much to be grateful for, but I think part of my learning as well is to live into that deeper meaning of gratitude, where you're grateful for the difficult lessons and the hard times as well. That's a good thing. Yep. Do you agree with the statement that I'm going to read? Concepts such as morality, justice, and beauty exist only in our minds. Any thought on that? It's hard because when you realize people can have very different tastes and find very different things beautiful or find different things moral. It's very hard to say. Okay. Are you a green person?
Like, do you recycle? Are you conscious about the environment?
And my family knows that they'll torture me if they hang something that can be recycled over the trash can and just wait till my eyes get big and I say, no! But then at the same time, I have to say that there's a little bit of hypocrisy in it because I think we consume entirely more than a family of 3 needs to consume. There's all these little things that I could be doing way better, and we're looking forward to at some point getting an electric car, but that's still a little bit on the horizon. So I'm still on the whole contributing to the problem much more than I'm solving it.
Okay. Is this life an illusion?
No, it's not. I mean, a Quranic verse comes to mind
Please
so specifically that, would you think that this life is just kind of play and amusement and delusion? It's not. I don't think so. I don't think it's all that there is. But I mean, I go back to the Quranic concept that it's a testing grounds, and it's, in some ways, it's an opportunity, and we get to decide to some extent how we show up and how we're present.
Can you give the reference? Do you remember the name of the number?
Because I'm working in the Quran every day at this point, all of the verses have just become jumbled all together.
Which chapter? Surah Al-Baqarah?
It's
I think repeated, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very common
like the test.
And I probably didn't even translate word for word, but just more of the sense
of it. Yeah. So, because we believe, as a Muslim, you believe that, as much as I know, that this is a testing ground and you live here and your soul and your deeds are going to transfer to the next world. So, okay. What would you do if you knew that there was no tomorrow? What would you do today?
That question is interesting because I first thought, well, does that mean there's no tomorrow for anyone? Or there's just no tomorrow for me? Because it would be very different.
Oh, that's good. So I need to pose now. Okay, now you're giving me another question in this question. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to answer both?
Well, if there was no tomorrow for me, I'd probably be like packing my daughter's lunch and just taking care of everyday business.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I really do. I lost a brother when I was young. I've lost a sister in the course of my life. And I think watching them, one kind of slowly from terminal illness, I've just come to say any day could be the last day. So I try to live like that to the extent that it's
to the fullest.
Yeah, I really do.
So you don't cling to life as much, or do you?
I've just seen through all of these experiences how unpredictable things can be, and how maybe 1 minute you're perfectly healthy, and then the next year you're not even alive. And I've seen how you could go out, in the case of my brother who passed away in a motorcycle accident at 18, he just went out for a bike ride like he loved to do on any day and didn't come back. And it's just that could happen at any minute.
That's true.
And so we plan and we strive, but I mean, God knows what the future holds.
Yeah. Oh. So my last question. Oh, before the last question. Any message of hope to our listeners, to youths, to anybody, to all our people?
Yes, I'd say that the human spirit is so it can sustain so much and still have light. And when you do encounter another human spirit with light, there's just no other joy that I can think of. And if being with other human beings who have that quality of light is so amazing, then from my own worldview, if there's these experiences of feeling the divine in these powerful ways, I mean, that to me is what gives hope and what gives fuel and what grounds and what carries from from day to day. So yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for this conversation.
Thank you. So what lights you up, Celene? What lights you up?
I really do enjoy Islam. I think I enjoy Islam. I enjoy my family, my colleagues.
What do you mean by you enjoy Islam?
Yeah, I enjoy learning and striving and trying to understand more and memorizing things.
So
the whole package of learning. I really feel like there's no end to it. It's like this ocean that you just swim in.
So you're enjoying being in there. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for staying with me through this exciting episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode of Light Up with Shwa.